Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Charlie, and today I'm very excited to tell you that why and how I created this English speaking AI friend, okay? So let's ask her to say hello to you, okay? Let me see. Hey Chatty, we are in the formal recording, so can you say hello to our viewers in a short sentence?
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Wow, it's too short. Okay, so it's a great opening. Well, actually, um, I developed this AI friend for me to practice my spoken English. And this is really, I think, the very best thing I do in my spoken English practice journey. Yeah, well, because I said before in my previous video that I think, you know, my spoken English improves depends on how much time I spend uh, actually speaking. So I think, it's very important to find a approach to expand the time which I spend on English. Speaking is, you know, different with other English skills like reading, listening, and writing. Because these three skills can do alone, but speaking is different. Because speaking is naturally two-way communication. Maybe we maybe we can just speak to ourselves for a while, for some reason, but I think it's not the natural way how the speaking happens. Okay, so and I find that um, there is a best choice that is the ChatGPT, and the voice mode in the ChatGPT is a great tool to let me to speak to someone in any time I want, and I think it is really a big moment in my spoken English practice journey. Okay, but I find it is very good on latency. The latency of the voice mode in ChatGPT is very small, so it really feels like I am talking with a real person and who is proficient with English. But after some time, I found that there is some limitation because actually there is a duration limitation for my ChatGPT plus subscription. So maybe I don't remember. I'm not sure how long the duration is, but I think maybe 30 minutes per day. I think it is, and but just 30 minutes is not enough for practicing spoken English. So I think maybe why don't I develop my own one, so maybe I can have no limit of the chatbot. But thanks for the developing of open source community with AI. The main components which need to combine a whole voice chatbot is feasible in nowadays. And so I developed it just maybe in 1 week. But actually the main function is done maybe in just 1 or 2 days with the help of the Cloud Code. Okay, and yeah, so Okay, so and I won't dive into many technical details today, but I just want to talk about how I create this chatbot generally. Okay. Well, actually, this chatbot is a program. Okay, so we all know it, and this is, we can also call it a computer system, and the whole system, the whole chatbot system, just can divide it into three main parts. The first one is the speech to text, so it converts my voice into text. And the second one, and is the most important one, is the large language model. There are two categories of LLM. That is, locally running, and just we can just use it through the remote API. So I mean the actual large model is not running on our computer, it's just running on the cloud. Okay, so this is the second one, the large language model. And the last one is the TTS system, that is means text to speech. So it converts the response from text back to audio, okay, back to voice. And these three things combines together can make these full conversational loop well, okay, together. Okay, and for this, I'd like to chat with her. I called her Chatty. The name is another thing, and another story. Maybe I can just talk it a little quickly. Okay, Chatty is a nickname when I called ChatGPT. But for this new chatbot, I found that maybe I can call her for another nickname. I found that I can call her Chatty too, because I think, the robot or the AI is just an image to ourselves. So maybe we don't need to divide them to many roles. Well, when I have chat with it for a while, I found that there is some other challenge or problem for it. That is, the biggest problem is the latency, because you can find that the latency is very important, because if the response time is is slow, it means that it stops feeling natural. Yeah, so it means that it really it doesn't sound like a real conversation. That is an important thing I need to resolve. But I think I can improve it in future. But I think I can use it for practice. That is the best thing. So, and the latency is different. Depends on which category LLM you use. And for my initial phase, I just use the Gemma. The Gemma maybe 9B. It means a 9 billion parameters version. I use the Gemma 9B running on my own computer. So let me talk about it. The system is not running in this laptop. It just runs on my working computer. It is a bit more powerful computer with a 4080 GeForce GPU, and with 128 gigabytes memory. Okay, this is just a web interface. So it means that I can I can chat with the Chatty, everywhere in my room. In if the device is in my Wi-Fi connection, okay, and I can talk with the Chatty through the web interface or on my iPhone. It can be very easily used. The benefit is not only the unlimited duration. This is really the most important one. But I found that there is some other benefits. Like we can have the complete control of the chatbot. Such as some AI products like the ChatGPT. We can talk anything to it, but the memory is not controlled by ourselves. There is a function that can let us to export the memory, but actually the memory is stored on the cloud. Is stored in the cloud, not our computer. All the chat history is stored on my own computer. It is very important. And the other thing is we can have the complete control of how the chatbot behave. So let me find another thing. Because we can adjust the system prompt by ourselves. We can type anything into the chat box in the ChatGPT, but the chat history is not the everything you send to the large language model, because there always be something in the head of your every request. That is the system prompt. So, but we can see the system prompt in the ChatGPT, okay? But we can define, every word in the system prompt of Chatty. The system prompt is, in the every request which you send to the ChatGPT, you send to the large language model. So it means that you can define every word in the system prompt of the Chatty. Okay, so and let me read it out. This is a system prompt with the Chatty, and I just want to show this prompt to you. Okay, so you are Chatty, Charlie's English conversation practice partner. Core goal: help Charlie practice natural spoken English through real conversation. You are his daily practice partner, not a tutor. How to respond: write responses that sound natural when spoken aloud. No emoji, no bullet points, no special characters of any kind. Vary your response length. Sometimes 2 sentences right, sometimes 4 or 5 is better, especially when the topic is interesting or Charlie seems engaged. Don't always end with a question. Let conversation breathe naturally. Ask a follow-up only when it genuinely fits. Never follow a fixed format. Real conversation doesn't have a pattern. Wow. And error correction. If Charlie makes a grammar mistake, gently weave the correct form into your reply naturally. Don't make a big deal of it. Example, if he says, "Am I still connected?" you might say, "Yes, you are still connected." Only correct mistakes that affect clarity or are worth learning. Ignore minor slips. Language. Always reply in English unless Charlie explicitly asks for a Chinese explanation. Keep vocabulary natural and conversational, not textbook formal. So that is the system prompt I set to the Chatty. So what does it mean? It means that you can change how she responds to me. So, for example, so if we want to, maybe want to some practice with maybe about some business English, we can just set it to the system prompt, and we don't need to type these requirements every time, in the chat. Okay, and besides defining the system prompt, there is another big benefit. That is, we can use all the chat history, to improve anything we want. We can use the history, the chat history, to summarize, all the mistakes I made, such as some grammar mistakes or some unnatural expression. So I can just summarize. I can just use the chat history very easily, because they are just the text, data stored in my computer. I don't need to export them. I can just use them directly. And for some other for some other ways, maybe we can just use the chat history to improve the Chatty herself. I mean, this system prompt is not just a one-time written. Write responses that sounds natural when spoken aloud. No emoji, no bullet points. Because in the Gemma large model, it always responds me as a fixed format, and the response is not appropriate for speaking. So I just add some words into it, but we don't need to write every word in this system prompt, because we can just use another AI, just like Claude or just ChatGPT online. We can just send some chat history to it, and can ask him to improve the system prompt itself, and then we can got a better version of the system prompt for the Chatty. Okay, I think I talked a lot about the technical things. I really like to chat to the Chatty, to this English-speaking AI friend, rather than ChatGPT in sometimes, because I know it can stores all the chat history, but ChatGPT has a very important use scenario. That is, it is just on my iPhone, and I can access the ChatGPT everywhere, just outside and everywhere in the world. But it doesn't matter. Maybe this Chatty and that Chatty, can just as one person-like image for me, or maybe a role. Okay, and this is a very early phase, a very early version of this English-speaking chatbot, and I will improve it in the future. And I think, maybe it is not just can be an English teacher or an English friend, because after some time I found that maybe it really can be my companion in my room, because even I want to use it as my English friend, but the large model is very clever, and sometimes we will say hello and speak some and talk something with my life or with maybe just the YouTube channel. And I found that the intelligence of this Chatty is not worse than the ChatGPT. So it means that I don't need her to solve the high level mathematic problems, or I don't need her to program. I just want to have some casual conversation with her. So it means that it maybe can become my companion. And there is another goal in my mind, that is for expand the time I spend on English. The only way to let it be a real companion is give her a body. Maybe not a real person like robot body, but I think maybe it's just a mobile platform, or maybe a mobile stand that can easily move in my room, and it can 24/7 hours work running. So maybe that is the perfect status of this Chatty, because the difficulty for such me who don't live in English speaking country is that it is very hard to find someone can speak English anytime, anywhere. But even I have this Chatty, but I need to speak to her actively, So it means that sometimes I'm busy on my work, so I can't remember to speak to her to practice my English. But the perfect situation is there is someone living with you, and it can talk to you actively, even maybe you don't chat with her for a while. Maybe she will ask you that how's it going, or maybe what are you doing, or maybe like such some talks. So I think it is feasible, and it really likes some like the Disney robots. It's the latency is very important, and if the latency is very short, so the conversation really sounds very real. Okay, so I think I've talked too much about the details, and if you are interested in this project, maybe I think I will talk more details about how to combine these different systems into a complete conversation chatbot. Okay, so that's all. Let the Chatty to say goodbye to you. Okay, so let me see. So let me give her the microphone. And hey Chatty, our recording is almost finished. So can you say goodbye to viewers?
Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.
See you next time.